Hello, viewers and learners, wherever you are. Today we are going to look at quadratic expressions and equations. Uh, Majorly, we are going to look at the concept of factorization. Now, uh, what are these quadratic equations and expressions? Before we deal with the factorization, you need first of all to understand what are quadratic expressions. Now, a quadratic expression is an expression with a variable having the highest power of 2. Any expression that has a variable or an unknown value that has a highest power of 2 is known as a quadratic expression. For example, if you have an expression ax raised to 2 plus bx plus c, the statement here is known as a quadratic expression because you can see the variable that is x has a power of 2. So any expression with a variable having the highest power of 2 is known as a quadratic expression. If it is raised to a power of 3, it becomes a cubic equation. So raised to the power of 2 becomes a quadratic expression. So that one is a quadratic expression. Now, what is a quadratic equation? Now, any expression or any quadratic expression that can be arranged in the form x squared plus bx plus c equals to 0, that one constitutes what we call a quadratic equation. It is like a quadratic expression that is equated to a certain constant. Quadratic expression equated to a certain value. It can be 0, it can be 1. So that one creates what we call a quadratic equation. And here the values of a stands for their known value. I mean values of a and b, those are known values, or we call them coefficients. X is the unknown value of the variable. C is a constant, and a can never be equals to 0. When a equals to 0, then it is changes from being a quadratic equation to a linear equation. So the value of a cannot be 0. If the value of a is 0, it changes from being a quadratic equation to a linear equation. Now, let us look at the concept of factorization. How do we carry out factorization on quadratic equations? Now, given any quadratic equation, ax squared plus bx plus c equals to 0, note that not all the time it is equal to 0. It can be equal to 1, equal to 3, whichever way it is presented, you have to express it that that quadratic equation must equal to 0 for you to carry out factorization. So how does it work out? Now, as I've said, any quadratic equation must equal to 0. So even on the right hand side, if you are represented with the number 6, it has to be brought to the left hand side so that on the right hand side you remain with 0. Now, in any quadratic equation, there is a sum, and the sum represents the coefficient of x, which is b, and then there is the product. Product represents the multiplication of coefficient of x squared and multiplication of the constant c. So the sum is b and the product is a multiplied by c. Now, having found these two values, that is the sum and the product, you need to find two values that or you need to find two numbers that if you add, you're going to get b, that is the coefficient of x, and if you multiply, you're going to get the product, that is a multiplied by c. So after you found these two values or these two factors that you are looking for, that's why now you can be able to carry out factorization on a quadratic expression. For example, represented with x squared plus 6x plus 9 equals to 0. So you can see that this one is a quadratic equation. It is equated to 0. Now, from this quadratic equation, you can see that sum is the value of b, and the value of b here is 6. Then the product is the value of a multiplied by c. So the product here, the value of a is 1, the value of c is 9. So 1 times 9 gives us 9. So we need to find two values that if you add, you get 6, and if you multiply, you'll get 9. And these values are 3 and 3. If you take 3 plus 3, you get 6. If you take 3 multiplied by 3, you will get 9. Now, we have to rewrite the value of 6x in the form of 3 and 3. So for us to write the value of 6x in the form of 3 and 3, that is our factors we found, it becomes x squared plus 3x, then plus the constant c, which is 9, and this one equals to 0. So you can see we've been represented with the two values that we carry out factorization on. So the common factor between x squared and 3x is x. So we take x outside, and inside the bracket you remain with x plus 3. So we factor x outside and you remain with x plus 3. The second bit, we have 3x plus 9. So the common factor is 3. Given that the common factor is 3, so we factor out 3, and inside you remain with x plus 3. And this one should equal to 0. So it means that x plus 3 multiplied with x plus 3 should give us 0. Now, x plus 3 multiplied by x plus 3, you can see these two factors are similar. So when we carry out factorization and you get similar factors, then it means that this one is a perfect square, because it is going to factorize itself into two equal parts. And when it factorizes itself into two equal parts, we call it a perfect square. A perfect square is a quadratic equation that factorizes itself, or a quadratic expression that factorizes itself into two equal parts. Now, it means that x plus 3 into brackets, x plus 3 also into bracket equals to 0. So it means that x plus 3 equals to 0. So subtract 3 from both sides, and you get that x equals to negative 3. That's how you carry out factorization. Now, I want us to look at the next question. 3x squared minus 11x minus 4 equals to 0. Now you can see the value of a here is not 1 like the previous one. The value of a is 3. So from what we know is that the sum is the coefficient of b, meaning coefficient of x, which is b, and that one is negative 11. Then the product is always a multiplied by c. That is the coefficient of x squared multiplied by the constant. So 3 multiplied by negative 4 gives us negative 12. So we need to find two factors that, or two numbers that if we add, you will get negative 11, and if you multiply them, you'll get negative 12. And those two numbers are negative 12 and 1. If you take negative 12, you add 1, you'll get negative 11. If you take negative 12, you multiply with 1, you'll get negative 12. So you rewrite 11x in terms of these two factors you found. And this one translates to 3x squared minus 12x plus x minus 4 should give us 0. Now we have the first bit of the equation, and you find that 3x squared minus 12x, the common factor that we factorize out is going to be 3x. So in the brackets you remain with x minus 4. Then plus the second bit between 1x and negative 4, the common one is 1, and inside you remain with x minus 4, and this one equals to 0. So this one brings to 3x plus 1, then x minus 4, and this one equals to 0. So you can see that these two, they are not equal parts. This one has not factorized itself into two equal parts. When you don't have two equal parts, then it means that this expression or this equation is not a perfect square. It is not a perfect square. So we go ahead and solve this one. So it means that either 3x plus 1 equals to 0, which means 3x equals negative 1, that is after subtracting 1 from both sides, so x equals to negative a third. Or it means that either x minus 4 equals to 0, which gives x equals to 4. So you can see that from there we can ascertain that the value of x equals to negative a third or 4. And a small exercise for you to try out to see if you understood what factorization is. So solve by factorization. The first question is 9x squared minus 6x plus 1 equals to 0. Then 4x squared plus 4x minus 3 equals to 0. Thank you for watching and learning. You can like and subscribe to my YouTube channel OMBC Online Math and Facebook channel OMBC Online Mathematics. Thank you. Be blessed.